I'm going to show you the cameras I've got here on this table. I've got a plethora of cameras that I've owned throughout the years. And then I'm going to show you my daily use camera. And I'm going to explain not just like what it is and all this, but why it is I've done this, why I've gone this route, and why this has been the upgrade path for me as a photographer. Now, there's two types of people who call themselves photographers, which you look at the really big picture. There's those who like cameras and know how to use cameras, and there's those who create images. They're two very different types of people. I know both. Both can be successful in their own ways, in their own niches, their own genres, all of that good stuff. Both can be successful. It's not you do one or the other. My path, I'm a photographer. I am not a camera person. I love cameras. I have a lovely collection. Like I said, my Canon rangefinder. Very happy with this. It's brass, it's clockwork. I've got the Canon F1. Brass, works without a battery, 2,000th of a shutter, full frame, 35mm. Lovely bit of kit, love this. The brassing on it's beautiful. It's got a top-down viewfinder as well. Very nice. But I like these. So these here, these get me excited. These make me have naughty thoughts. These, not so much, not so much. But I'm going to tell you how I've ended up here, where I currently am with my current camera setup. Because I'm quite heavily invested in this system, not financially, it wasn't expensive, but I'm very invested in it from a workflow point of view, from a style point of view, and from the way that I like to work. This is me, and this is how I got here. And it started off with a 50D. The 50D was what I bought first. Prior to that, I had a 450D. My 450D, my uncle very kindly lent me. I bought some lenses. So naturally, when I bought a next camera, I'd already bought a 28 and a 50mm prime. I was going to buy a Canon. I'd already got the lenses, and that's how we started this mess here. I'm not a Canon fanboy. I don't think Canon cameras are better than any other brand, but there is a reason for this. Eventually, I started working. I was working with my mate Hits, we're shooting weddings. I got the 50D, it had the same settings as his 5D Mark IIs. They were very expensive. I could not afford a 5D Mark II, so I bought a second-hand 5D Mark I from Jacobs or Jessops when it went bust. £800, a lot of money. Beautiful camera, beautiful skin tones. Wasn't a CCD sensor, it was a CMOS, but it had that early look. The early CMOS sensors were more filmic. I worked that camera to death. We shot headshots, events, weddings, everything with it. And then I eventually saved up enough to buy this. This is my first, numero uno, Canon 5D Mark II. The first camera I had which could do video. The first camera I had that I was like, yes, this is pro and this is up to date. The 5D Mark III hadn't come out when I bought this. I bought it secondhand, £1,500. I bought two of them, £3,000 in one day. At the time, that felt spendy. I got a 35mm 1.4, I had the 22.8, 51.4, 85 1.4, 7200 and 17-40, a whole array of lenses. I was shooting documentary, I was shooting portraits, I was shooting everything. I was the local photographer, jack of all trades, master of none, but I was loving life. This was great. I loved this camera. This one here, yes, it's held together with gaff tape, but this has made me hundreds of thousands of pounds over its lifetime. Very good bit of kit. I carried on using this after the 5DSR had been released, after the 5D Mark IV had been released. I did my first £10,000 shoot on this body with this 100mm 2.8 non-L Canon lens that I bought for £200. The first big one was on that. All of this kit here existed then, all of it. But that's what I used, because that's what I had. Yes, I felt a bit insecure about the kit I was using. I definitely did. There was definitely a bit of me going, ugh, I've not got the latest kit. But it didn't matter. The advert was great. It won an award. Jobs are good. And I shot documentary work on this commercially. I commercially shot lifestyle and documentary work on this. I remember reading reviews that you couldn't focus this camera. Nikon had like a D3 or something, which had all these autofocus points. And if you had this, you wouldn't get a shot in focus. I've never missed focus. It has one autofocus point. There's others around the edge, but they don't work. One. They said it doesn't have dual card slots. It can't be a professional camera. But I use good cards. I've never had an issue with corrupting cards. Phase 1 has one card slot. Hasselblad, one card slot. Signal digital backs, cable. I currently shoot tethered to Capture One to my hard drive, which is one card. I don't use two card slots, and yes, if I was a wedding photographer, I would perhaps want that extra security, but I've only ever found that files corrupt writing to the card. I've never had the card itself corrupt because I have good card etiquette. At this point, you end up with 2 corrupted files on 2 separate cards. So I don't know. I'm not a dual card slot. Get angry in the comments below. Let me know why I'm wrong. But it's not for me. Anyway, that's where we got to. Then, years of working with a 5D Mark II. Brilliant camera. I kept shooting adverts or shooting commercially. I'd got an agent. And of course, the 5D SR and the 5D Mark IV had already come out. It wasn't until Canon sort of slipped into mirrorless that I bought a 5DS. This was like 3-4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I bought a 5DS and a 5DSR because I was scared of moire. And you know, that's how we moved into this line of work. Now my current camera we'll get to in a bit, but the 5DSR is brilliant. It's slightly better than the 5D Mark II. The only real difference is that it has better resolution for my work. We need a lot of resolution. We do a lot of composites, cutting out. Cutting out with a pen tool on a 50 megapixel file is easier than on a 20 megapixel file. Just is. 100 megapixel, easier than 50. The bigger it gets, the easier it is to cut out. Now, throughout this journey, by simply going, well, I'll just get the next Canon camera, it's done a few things for me. And I know this because I didn't do it at the point of buying the 5D Mark II. When I bought the 5D Mark II, I spent a year researching it. I spent a year looking at whether this is the camera for me. And there's 2 types of photographers out there. Broad sweeping statement here, get mad at me later. 2 types of photographers, those who take pictures and those who use cameras. Both of them perfectly viable professions. Neither is better than the other, it's just 2 different ways of thinking. You're either in the gear or you're in the image. Me personally, I'm in the image. The time I wasted researching this camera, I could have spent a year of that time, obviously it wasn't every waking hour, but I could have spent that time learning my craft. The time you spend learning how to use a new system, when I got this Blackmagic camera to shoot the YouTube vids on and my workshops, it was a nightmare. The learning curve was steep, the time I had to invest into it was very high, not good at all for a use of time. I should have got a Canon mirrorless camera and used that for video, which does 10-bit. Should have done that, didn't, idiot, wasted time. The money's irrelevant when you look at the time. So by simply going 5D Mark II, 5DSR, there wasn't learning new menu systems. All I had to do was go, oh, there's one button in a different place for the on and off switch. That's annoying, but I'll grasp that. And I saved that time to invest in learning. Once you've put one of these in front of your 35mm full frame camera, color science be damned. This neutralizes it. This is a color checker passport. They're like £100. If I shoot with 10 different cameras and bang that in front of it, they'll all be about the same. All about the same. No particular camera brand has better lenses. And if you're going to start quoting DxO scores at me, you've lost the battle already. At the point where you think the DxO score is relevant to professional photography, you've gone down the wrong path. It means nothing. If your idea sucks, if your style sucks, if anything in terms of your vision is not on point, DxO scores don't matter. And if that is all on point, DxO scores don't matter. Sure, they're interesting if you want to find out which picture is going to be sharper, but when you print it, it looks the same. So yeah, DxO scores just don't matter. So by sticking to this brand and being a Canon fanboy, if you will, I don't have to learn new things. One of the reasons I won't go to mirrorless is not because it's not better, I mean it's not, but it's not for what I do at least, but it's nothing to do with that. It's because it's a different system. I've used an optical viewfinder for years. It'll be different using a digital viewfinder. That time, learning it, is wasted. If I have to in the future, I will, but for now, I don't see a time when I'm going to need to use an electronic viewfinder in my career. The Phase 1 100 megapixel will be affordable when I next upgrade. That is an optical viewfinder. I won't need to use an electronic viewfinder. Like, what possible image quality update could there be that means I'll have to learn that? My eyes are not going to get any better. They're not. I can't see any more upgrade in camera on paper. When they print it, got a BJP to hand, like, how is more resolution going to make any of this any better? It isn't. It's the idea, it's the concept, it's the story, it's the narrative, it's the aesthetic. That's what makes it better, not the resolution. So the reason we've stuck with Canon, or the reason I stuck with Canon, is for ease, is for simplicity. If I'd have started with a Nikon, I'd still be shooting Nikon. If I'd have started on a Sony, I'd still be shooting Sony. And if I'd have started on mirrorless, I wouldn't move to a DSLR. I just want to save the time to create more. People ask me how I can be a photographer and have a YouTube channel. It's because I don't waste time reading forums, reviews, looking at all these weird minutiae and differences between, is the 35 1.4 from Sigma better than the Canon 1.4 Mark II? What's the difference in sharpness, contrast, micro contrast, lens coating? That's a snooze fest in the career of photography. The only big upgrade I've made is this here. This is my Cambo system. I've done videos on this before. I won't bore you to death with it. But this is the big one. It's a tilt shift lens on steroids. It's got a Mamiya Sekal 6x9 lens on the front of it. And a big part, a huge part of why I bought this is because these cameras, with all their mechanical, very nice. Digital cameras, pretty darn boring and uninspiring. Having a camera with all these beautifully manufactured dials and knobs and all the rest of it, it's pleasing. My Zeiss Milvus Macro Planar 100mm lens is better than this lens here. And if we're doing a completely straight on shot or top down, that would be the better lens to use, but I still use this one. It's not technically as good, but the feeling of using the nice knobs and sliders and all the clicks and that to me makes a difference. And that helps me feel like a photographer. Using some digital thing doesn't help. The camera on the back of it's just a sensor. And more than that, my daily camera, the camera I use the most, isn't a Canon. If I get it out of here. This is my Konica. It's my Big Mini. It's the, which model is it? So it's a really catchy name, isn't it? The BM302. It's a point and shoot. It just does a nice job. It sits in my pocket. If I lose it, I don't mind. Quiet now. I go to the darkroom to develop my film. I scan it in. I really enjoy that process, that tactile hands-on process. That gives me this. And this is why I'm with Canon. It's not for anything else. Anyone who tells you one brand is better than another, they're delusional. There is no improvement in these different brands. They're all the same thing. They might offer slightly different advantages in different genres, but I mean, I'm quite confident I can shoot the Olympic Games on a 1DS Mark II, and get good images. Not as good as the top photographers, and if I was getting paid the top money, sure. But what a lot of us do is we go, Scott does well in food and drink photography. He's got this camera. I need to buy this. But keep in mind, 5D Mark II, 1,500 quid. Well, actually at the time, probably earned £700 when I was using it for this. £10,000 a day. So, does it really matter? Absolutely not. Does the brand matter? Obviously not. And does the camera model matter? Not really. I could still do my job on the 5D Mark II today. Wouldn't be as easy as the 5DSR, but I could still do it. And I'd make, these are cheap now anyway, but I'd make similar money. But that's it. That is why Canon. This is the whys of Canon photography. And that's as simple as that. There's nothing untoward, fanboyish, sponsorish going on here. I'm just lazy.